is vibrant. So Creative Mornings, it's global. Everyone around the world doing a Creative Mornings talk this month is using that shared theme. The theme is always chosen by one of the chapters of Creative Mornings. May's theme was chosen by the San Antonio chapter. And this month's speaker is Erin O'Hare. And now Erin has to bear with me while I read her bio to you all. Erin is a journalist, a musician, and a DJ who isn't very good at saying no to interesting projects or Friday morning talks.
Yeah, I'm like barely functional at this point in the day, so it's amazing that I'm here.
For at least 40 hours a week, she is the neighborhoods reporter for the hyperlocal nonprofit news outlet Charlottesville Tomorrow, where she writes in-depth stories mostly around the ongoing housing crisis. Her stories often center the people historically left out of these conversations. In a previous professional life, she was an arts and culture journalist, and her work has appeared in Bandcamp Daily, Women in Sound, CeVo Weekly, and many other news outlets. She also plays electric bass in 2 bands, the freak beat French pop post-punk band Outer World.
They're like here tomorrow night if you want to come.
Just like in this exact space tomorrow night. If you don't get enough Erin and Visible Records, come back. And this space is pretty far from UVA grounds, so you don't have to worry about graduation.
That's right.
Come hide out here.
Yeah.
So that's her first band. And she is also in the noisy face-melting Radon Abatement. I'm a big fan of both. She also co-hosts Black Circle Revolution on WTJU 91.1 FM Charlottesville, also streaming on WTJU.net, where her shows highlight diverse punk and punk-adjacent bands. She also occasionally contributes music writing to the long-running punk fanzine Maximum Rock and Roll. Along with her partner Davis, she also books music here at Visible Records. Like her, well, I don't know if tomorrow's show counts, but...
Well, as far as the TJU thing,
Tomorrow's
but
TJU
yeah,
thing.
we are hosting it. So.
There was a great show this past Tuesday.
Thank you, yeah.
You know, she's around.
I do some
And
stuff.
also is the author of Under the Table and Screaming, a 5-part zine series published by WTJU on mostly independent DIY.
Yeah, a lot of them. There's more colors.
They are available online. They're available at pretty much every record store or bookshop in town. And the 5th book in the series is coming out next month, and they're doing a launch party / show also here.
If you want 10 hours of music, you should come.
12 hours on the poster.
12 hours on the poster. Thomas is making the poster. It's a true community
It says
endeavor.
noon to midnight, so
Okay,
we'll
awesome.
see.
Half
You
a day.
can come and go. As
Yeah.
and I don't know, it's the show is a celebration
Yeah.
of the venue, Magnolia House, now defunct, but you can learn a lot about it in the 5th issue of the series. In addition to all of those other things, when Erin has time, she likes to read, cook, collage, draw, spirograph, and watch Bob's Burgers.
That's
She
true.
bakes, she says, pretty good pies. They're very good pies. And wants to learn to sew her own dresses. She lives in Charlottesville on unceded Monacan and Manahoac lands with her partner, the 2 handsome cats, and their out-of-control record and tape collection. She probably needs a nap.
That's true.
Erin O'Hare.
Thank you to Jeremy for that introduction. I've known Jeremy for 14 years now? 13 years, so he's been asking me to do this for a really long time. So thank you for hounding me enough to get me here, I guess. Yeah, something like that. So before we begin, I want to take a moment to give a brief land acknowledgement, which is one way that we can all help fight Indigenous erasure. And today we're gathered in what is now known as Charlottesville, Virginia, and I acknowledge and honor the ancestral lands of the past, present, and future Monacan and Manahoac people who are the original inhabitants of this land. And before beginning, I also want to acknowledge that I'm a cis het white woman and I have a lot of privilege. Because of my race, my gender, my sexuality, I have access to a lot of spaces and experiences that other folks do not. And I'm really not naive to the fact that what I'm about to talk about, I've in many cases been able to do because of my identity. And it's really important to me to try to break those barriers down, and I'm committed to that in the work I'm about to talk about. But I also just, felt like it's important to put that out there before I talk about all these great things I've been able to do, because not everyone can, but I think that they should. So until last week, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. It was like, vibrant, cool. I could talk about my closet full of patterns and colors, but that's like boring. I could talk about one of the many things that I do, but Jeremy just did that for me. So my life is really vibrant. And it's because I live in this community and because I work to make it really vibrant. And I want to talk about how I remember that Charlottesville is a vibrant and lively community when my work as a journalist focuses on its problems. Because I have these like two things that are kind of always at play in my life. And so I thought that maybe by sharing that, I could, encourage some folks to do the same. I feel pretty blue about a lot of stuff. So maybe talking about how I kind of balance that can help some other folks as well. A little Beg wanted to join us too. I had like a bit of an epiphany about that recently, about that kind of like dual thing that's always in my head. So one of my bands, Outer World, recently went on a 10-day, 8-date tour, and we went as far west as Chicago and as far north as Boston, which is my hometown. So that was pretty fun. My cute mom got to see me play, and I was feeling really blue, really down when our van rolled back into Charlottesville the morning of May 5th. I didn't anticipate the emotional reaction I'd have to saying bye for now to my bandmates, who all live in Richmond, and who I had just been within a few feet of for like 10 days. I mean, we were never more than like from here to the back room away from one another. Usually we were next to one another in the van. So I cried a lot, but I was also unhappy, like really unhappy to be back in Charlottesville. I've lived here for like almost 15 years now. So I know a lot about it. And the more I learn about its history, the angrier I get, right? Like how colonizers murdered and pushed out Monacan and Manahoac people, and then white people in the 1920s eliminated their indigenous identity on paper, and tried to erase them from public record. Like, it makes me so mad. And how black people were bought and sold as property from various sites throughout Court Square, like right downtown, where I go to the doctor, and where kids go to school, and where I have to go to court for work. And knowing Charlottesville as well as I do, some days that's all I see when I'm walking around. Like in my mind's eye, I see the family homes of Vinegar Hill that were raised to build the downtown mall, the family homes of Gospel Hill that were raised to expand UVA Hospital. I see like trucks backed up into parking spots with like the bed of the truck hanging out over the sidewalk, and like how that makes it inaccessible to anyone using a wheelchair or a walker, or who doesn't have like full physical faculty to like step off the sidewalk and walk further up and do this. Like, it makes me so angry. And I hate sitting in court for eviction hearings, watching people lose their housing because their rent went up when their wages did not. I meet so many folks whose apartments are quite literally making them sick and they can't afford to move. Like, pardon my mouth, but this fucking place. Like, I say that to myself all the time. I'm like, this fucking place, ah. So the day the tour van rolled back into town was also the day after state police violently dismantled the encampment supporting Palestine at UVA. And it felt really awful to come back to that. And it must have felt so much worse to actually be there, right? And the feeling that I had felt really similar to the one I had after the July 2017 KKK rally, after August 11th and 12th in the Unite the Right weekend. And the feeling in the air, all the images I was seeing in the news, on social media. My job is to partly help confront that, even though I didn't report on it. It triggered the PTSD that I developed during the summer of 2017. And I wanted to crawl in a hole, and I wanted to hide, and I didn't want to be back in Charlottesville. I wanted to be anywhere else. And I'm not proud of that, by the way, like the feeling of wanting to crawl into a hole, like that's a huge privilege to be able to do that. But in the spirit of being open and vulnerable, that's how I felt. So, this is all like that. I'm like totally bringing down the vibe right now. But a couple of days after I got back and was having all these thoughts and feelings and all of that, I was telling a colleague of mine about the tour. I was reflecting on what I'd seen and done and ate and smelled, and about the amazing variety of food I got to eat in all these other cities, like the unbelievable vegan deli sandwiches in Pittsburgh. Like, I didn't know that vegan eggs were a thing and that they were really good. About the perfect slice of pizza and a dog named Lily in Kingston, New York, about playing a basement show in Chicago where the majority of the musicians in the bands were women. I'd never had that experience, like 3/4 women. And most of them, I think there were more women of color than white women. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, that doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen often enough. And I was telling her about the Muslim prayer that came over the loudspeaker in this like Detroit adjacent neighborhood called Hamtramck. And it was just like broadcast throughout the whole neighborhood so that everyone could pray together. And I was like, this is amazing and beautiful. And like, why don't we have things like that in Charlottesville, right? Or many other places. So I was telling my colleague about all these things and I was getting really excited about it. And, that was kind of the end of our conversation. And then I was like, I just got so excited about all these things, and yet I still feel like awful about being home. This sucks. Bleh. So I just was thinking a lot about this and ruminating on it, as I do, as someone who sometimes struggles with depression and anxiety. That's how my brain works. So in thinking around all of this, I remembered a conversation that I had with a New York City hardcore band called Pyrex, who played a show here at Visible Records last year. They rolled in with all their gear and they put it down, and I was showing them around the warehouse, like, bathrooms are here. Please don't touch these things. You can look though. Do you need anything from our practice space? Like, how can we help you? And as we were walking around, this space obviously is cool, right? We have a gallery, like low-cost artist studios. If you went out into the warehouse, you'd see the tool library, practice spaces for bands. There's a woodworker, a glass blower, someone making mead. There's like, I think a leather worker in there somewhere. There's just so much happening in this one building. And this band was like, this is so cool. And they spent a ton of time in the warehouse just kind of going around looking at this stuff. Then they played a great show. There was a good sized crowd, and people were super generous with their donations at the door, which meant that like all of that money went to bands. Like, we don't take a cut at Visible Records for shows because we want to support artists and their work, and they deserve to be paid for it. So the band was super excited. They were like, oh, we can like buy gas and like have real meals today. And it just felt really good to be able to do that. And the Pyrex guys kept saying, this place is amazing. This place is so cool. I wish we had something like this in New York. And that is a direct quote. I wish we had something like this in New York. And I was like, in New York City? Like, everything is in New York City. Everything. That's what you hear, right? Like, New York has everything. Like, and I was just like, what is happening? And they were like, yeah, we don't have something like this there. And they keep asking to come back. Like, they loved it. Every couple of months, they ask if we have a night open so they can come through. I can't wait to make that happen again. But like, every time I get discouraged about what is happening in our community and in our country and the world, it's important to acknowledge that. But I have to remember conversations like that, right? Like, we have things that other places don't have. But no place is perfect, right? Like, Charlottesville is so vibrant. It really is. Like, that's just something I want to convey to people all the time. And like, looking away from our problems and our past, pretending that stuff isn't there, not thinking about it, like, that's not the answer either. Like, that's not how you remember that this place is vibrant. You have to acknowledge that, right? Because if we don't, we risk making those same mistakes again. But like, that kind of thinking sometimes to me can like take up like this much space in my head, right? And that's like a dark place to live. And so I have to counter it with something. And I counter it by like actively reminding myself of conversations like the one I had with Pyrex. thinking about being in this room right now with all of these people. Like, I know so many of you, and so many of you are amazing artists and, you know, creative people in your own way. It's not always just art or music or whatever, you know? And so whenever I'm feeling crappy about Charlottesville and living here, I think about all the other people that I know who are doing things and making things. It's, you know, I talk to and highlight, I hope, in my work, the voices of people in the community who are speaking out against the injustices, who are, you know, turning like a gray sky into a blue one, you know, metaphorically, all that stuff. You know, I get to talk to tenants who speak up about bad landlords and risk displacement and homelessness in doing so. Like, that is powerful that they will fight for that. You know, they are putting so much at risk. It's talking to the descendants of the people bought and sold in Court Square and attending the memorials they have for their ancestors, where they sing songs and read poems and they show their love and their honor for their family and that resilience very publicly. And they invite people to join them. Like, they do it in public. You can go and be respectful, but you can witness that. You can partake in that. You know, it's getting to play the music of these really diverse like punk bands that I play on my radio show from all over the world, and getting to book bands here at Visible Records that don't have a space anywhere in town. It was getting to talk to dozens of musicians and artists and, you know, show making happeners, however you want to say it, bookers, for the zine series, like dozens of people, a lot of them who hadn't really been asked about that work before. And like Nathan from TJU, they were totaling up the page count. We have more than 500 pages about local music. 520. Yeah, so like that's, and like that only cracks the surface, really. Like, I didn't do a big back history deep dive. These are like more recent things. So there's so much here. There's so much. And I just remember, or what I have to remember and what I actively have to remind myself to remember, is that these things don't just happen. It's not like, you know, Visible Records just like popped up and it was like, oh yay, now we have this great warehouse with all this cool stuff happening, and you can see art, or you can see music, or you can blow glass or turn wood or anything, right? Like, people wanted this to happen and they made it happen. And whenever someone asks me about what I love about Charlottesville, my first answer is the people, because it's the people here who make shit happen. Like, it is amazing. It is amazing. They make art. People make music. They make space for art and music. They open queer bookstores that double as community gathering spaces. People cook for one another. They stock the free fridge. They share the vegetables from their garden. Like, people in this community do so much for one another. It's really beautiful. Like, I don't know, I'm getting a little emotional as I talk about it, because it's so great. I really love it. And like, people here stand up for themselves and they stand up for one another. Like, people here have literally put their bodies on the line for their neighbors. And I don't even have words to like explain the importance of that, right? Like, it's amazing. So all of that is to say that Charlottesville is so vibrant. And if you don't think it is, or if you ever forget, you have to look a little harder. And if you look hard and the thing that you want to see happening isn't happening, you've got to do it. Like, find the people who can help you and start doing it. It might take a while. You might run into a bunch of barriers, like a lot of barriers, given what we know about Charlottesville and its history. But people have kicked them down before, and just keep at it. Find the people who can help you bust through it, because there are people in this town who probably also want that thing. And if you do it, they will come to you. And then you've created this amazing like micro community within the community. And I think the more that we do that for one another, like, just our community will be even better. So just keep building on all of that, I would say, and, you know, just keep looking and do it. Like, I don't want to be like Nike, but like, you know, it was hard when I was trying to I was like, do I give this a title? And I title it like, just do it. But, you know, then we'd probably get a cease and desist or something, and we don't want that. But yeah, just like, people make things happen. Things don't just happen. So I feel like that's kind of all I have to say about it. And again, like, I don't know, I never thought that my life would be as vibrant as it is right now. Like, especially, no offense, living in Charlottesville. Like, I moved here and was kind of like, I don't know, I grew up in a city, I like miss a big city. There's nothing for me to do here, but like, God, was I wrong. I was so wrong. Like, I never in my life thought that at 36, I would be playing in 2 bands, I'd be working as a journalist, I would be a DJ on a radio station where people like from literally all over the world listen to my radio show, and I never thought I'd be booking bands. Like, I can't believe that I've been able to do all these things here. But then when I think about what I know about this community, I'm like, well, of course, because there are people here doing that work so that I can do that stuff. And then it's also on me to like do things so that other people can have a vibrant life. So it's just this great chain of stuff and things and people. And so I'm really glad that I thought about that like 4 days ago and told Jeremy that that's what I was going to talk about. So I have like no like good way to sum this up or wrap this up, but I guess I can take questions if anyone has them. Is that what I'm supposed to do? I'm like, I get so nervous and I get really worked up. So I'm really sweaty, but
far enough away.
Awesome. Okay. Does anyone have a question or like a comment, or do you want to like share something with everyone else like that you think is awesome, vibrant? Corey?
Question.
Uh-huh.
What has been the most impactful story you've written? And actually, 2 questions.
Okay.
Impactful story
Uh-huh.
you've written. And then, what's a story that you wish you could write about?
Oh. Well, it's hard to say like the most impactful, like on me personally or on the community?
I'll let you pick.
Oh, damn it. Okay, so it's hard to say because I get like, I don't know, I care so much about what I write about. Like, I'm really proud of the zine series because it's like, I talk to so many people who have often been left out of like narratives about local music or Charlottesville music. So that was something that I was really proud of, to be able to like put all those voices together and give them to so many people in that format. I'm really proud of a story I wrote about Monacan Indian Nation when they finally received federal recognition from the country in 2018. That was for CEVO Weekly. And I'm encouraging people to read this, not because I wrote it, but because of the content. Like, when I wrote this, I got so many comments from people being like, I had no idea of any of this. And so to have had the opportunity to like meet members of the tribe and get to know them and go to their ancestral home and all that, and then like put all of their experiences and the history together and like give that to the community in like in print in the paper, but then also online, and like really educate folks on Charlottesville's history in that way was, I'm really proud of that. And then at Charlottesville Tomorrow, I've done so many, like just, I don't know, it's like hard to remember. I'm working on one now about landlord-tenant law that I'm hoping will have a pretty big effect, like maybe even like changing the law. I don't know. We'll see. I probably shouldn't say that on camera, but but I'm hopeful that can have a pretty big impact. And then I was talking about this with my editor yesterday. There are so many stories that I have on my like docket that I've pitched that I haven't gotten to yet. And reporters, if you're listening, please do not steal these ideas. I'll know that you did. One about homeless families in the area. Like, I've written a lot about our neighbors who are unhoused and what resources they have and don't have, and how the city and the county and our community are working on that. But someone reached out and was like, hey, have you ever thought about writing about families experiencing homelessness? And I was like, I have not. So that is something I'd really love to work on. And others I probably shouldn't say, but I can tell you in private. I also frequently work with Corey on stories. Like, Corey has taken some really beautiful photos for stories that I've written, and I love working with Corey on those. So that's like such a gift to be able to do that. It's great. It's so good. See, this is why I'm like, yay! Like, this is what I'm like, I love living here. This is a perfect example. So, yes.
I'm curious, do you, this, all the things that you do, the stories that you tell, do you attribute the desire to want to tell those stories to something? Like, where did the desire come from?
Yeah,
to
that's
want to kind of pursue these stories that are well beyond, news, like well beyond what's in common news.
Yeah, I guess like I've always wanted to be a writer. I didn't know what kind of writer I'd want to be. And then when I kind of realized that I didn't want to, like, I'm not good at making things up, and I don't like writing about myself because I don't think I'm that interesting. But like I realized that I had this skill, and people always told me that I was good at it. And then I think I have a heart for, it feels weird to be like, I have a heart for justice, but like I am so bothered by like when people mistreat other people. Like, I can't stand it. I'm so angered by it, and I think it's wrong, and I want to do something about that, right? So acknowledging that part of my drive with like the skill that I have, I was like, how can I put the two together? And that's how I came to journalism. And I think that's basically where my desire to do these stories comes from. Like, there's so much that doesn't make it into most news coverage, really. And I'm fortunate to work at a local news outlet where I can look at those things. We're a nonprofit, and I have time to do that. So I think it comes from a drive of like wanting everyone to be able to live a good life, and I think if I can do something to make someone's life a little bit better, then I'm gonna do it. So that's where that comes from. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. We had one in the back a minute ago. Oh yeah. So Charlottesville Tomorrow is my current job. I have some like cards if you wanted to sign up for our newsletter. But at cvilletomorrow.org, all of our stories are free. So our newsletters, you don't have to have a subscription. We rely on like grant funding, but also community funding. So like readers are who support our work. So Charlottesville Tomorrow for journalism. WTJU has the zines. I have some here as well. But then like those are also in bookstores around town too. And I think those are my two main writing things right now. I'm taking a little break from writing outside of work because 4 years of working on the zines was a lot, and I would like to have a nap. So yes, yeah.
I so appreciate that you brought so much contrast in your story.
Thank you.
Because I think if you're in front of people and like you want to impress, I do anyway, impress and talk about how awesome everything is, and you're like, no, it really sucked coming back here.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because I think vibrancy pops even more against a dark background. So for you to show these contrasts is really powerful.
Thanks.
How can we as a community support you? What do you need from us?
Oh gosh, I mean, I feel pretty supported, and thank you for asking. I'm fortunate. I have a job that pays me a living wage. I have friends who have helped me when I've gone through really rough periods of my life. I have a partner who's so supportive. I have the support of Visible Records to bring bands here. I have TJU to let me play these these bands. Oftentimes they're my friends. So I feel really supported, and I would love for more folks in our community to feel that. So I think asking that question to a lot of other folks is a good thing to do. Yeah, thank you for asking. But it's important that we support one another, for sure. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, you could do that too. You can buy my zine.
Or your mixtape.
Well, I'm not allowed to sell the mixtapes. So, yeah, I make mixtapes. Usually what I do is, like, if people want to pay me for them, I just, like, $5 for the cost of the physical tape. I can't sell other people's music. Jeremy. You can listen to my radio show, buy the music of the bands that I play, go to shows, go to art shows, buy things from local makers. Yeah, another.
Sorry, thank you for coming to speak.
Yeah.
Just a quick shout out to Visible Records. If you're interested in the studio here, there are a few open, and you can apply on the website. Also, next door is a brand new printing space called Infinite Repeats, run by this gentleman, Thomas Dean. And it's an amazing space. You can sign up for a monthly membership, and you can do all kinds of printmaking in there. Thomas, I don't know if
Thank
you
you.
want
Well, that's great. Well, anyone can stop by. The doors open after this.
Yeah.
So just a lot going on, and it's available to you.
Well, and I think what Thomas is doing with Infinite Repeats is, like, a perfect example of, like, keeping Charlottesville a vibrant community, right? Like, Thomas has been making art and printmaking for how many years?
In this town, it's going back to 2003.
Okay, 20 years, more than 20 years. So Thomas has all of this knowledge, and Thomas got a bunch of equipment and put it in that room over there, and Thomas is like, I will teach you to do this. I will teach you the things, right? Like, that's a vibrant, beautiful thing. Like, you know, it's such an amazing opportunity that we have. And there's only one Thomas, but we have many Thomases in our community who are so willing to share their hard-earned knowledge, and, like, we should all listen, and you can follow what you're interested in. So, yeah.
It is so hard to find that things going
Yeah.
on, though. Yeah, and it is really nice to have something like this where you can talk about all these different worlds.
Yeah. It
'Cause I
is.
think that's the thing. I don't know. I think we've gotten to a place where we've lost it because just the way social media kind of routes you away from hearing about things you want to hear about, and it's hard to have a center where you can just go and find out about something. And this place is great for that.
Yeah.
Or TJU, or whatever, in your record stores or your. That's where I used to always go.
Yes.
To find everything that I need. But go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but it's true. It's like, if you came to Visible Records, you'd get to know folks here, but then all of those folks are also doing things in other parts of the community, right? Like, I don't just book shows here. I don't just work at Charlottesville Tomorrow. I don't just DJ at TJU. I do all of those things. And so, like, the web of things in Charlottesville is like pretty intricately woven. So just showing up in one place, you're kind of guaranteed to be led to another. Yes, Tammy.
I have had the privilege of being Erin's friend and her editor for many years, and I just would like to say what I recognized immediately in Erin's talent was her versatility, and she talks a lot about what her interests are. She finds herself able to cover the arts, to perform in the arts world, and then also to work as a very talented news reporter. She can write about, the unhoused, and she can write about big butts at the X-Bar.
That is true. I have done both.
Right away that she was going to have a long career in writing. But I would like to ask you, in your experience now, where you straddle these two worlds, how do we bring a little bit of, how do we cross over on each side of that? How do we engage our community in both the political and the art and help to understand each other?
Yeah, I think giving people access is the number one thing, right? Like here at Visible Records, just one example, when we book shows, we have a suggested donation for the bands, right? But we also don't turn folks away if they don't have the money to pay, because it should be open to everybody. So I have had folks who I talked to for a story about a shelter come to a show at Visible Records. They were like, we'd love to get involved, but like we don't really have extra money. And I was like, that's okay, just come, you know? And like and the bands are totally fine with that. They're like, yeah, we just want people to come be part of the community. So I really think that like giving everyone access to the arts, to everything that we could is a good way to do it. To be like, you're welcome here, not just you need to give me $10 to $15 before you come in. Like just allowing more people to come to do those things. I don't know if that totally answers the question, but I think that's one example of what you could do. Yeah. And again, connections. Tammy gave me a huge opportunity by bringing me into the fold at CEVO Weekly, and I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing without Tammy. So just like another really great example of when people see something in you and they want to lift that up, like Tammy did that for me, and I'm so grateful. And I have a lot of other folks in my life who've done the same thing. Like, I'm so lucky. So,
and you do it back.
Thank you, Emma. I do try to do it back because I've benefited so much. So like, if you see something in somebody and you can give them a boost or an opportunity, like you could probably really change that person's life a lot. So please do it.
I think what I remember about that Monacan story that stood out the most to me is that you were so vulnerable with them that they trusted you.
Yeah.
And that no one else could have written that story at that time.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of funny story about that. So I went down a couple of times to Bear Mountain in Amherst, Virginia, and I met with the chief, the assistant chief, and then they introduced me. Well, so I met with them once, and then they'd had a lot of reporters be like, who didn't listen, who kind of forced a narrative onto their story, and who like got things completely wrong. Like, you know, there had been a powwow, and you're not supposed to take photos of a lot of what happens at a powwow. You should be asking permission. And a photographer for a newspaper took a photo of a drum circle and titled it Monacan Drum Circle in the newspaper, and nobody in that circle was Monacan. It was not a Monacan drum circle, and they didn't ask. They just assumed, right? So they told me, the chief and assistant chief told me a lot about that, and I was like, thank you for sharing that with me. What can I do to make sure that I don't do that? Like, you know, and I tried so hard. I was so careful. And then after like a good 3-hour conversation, they were like, would you like to come back next weekend? And I was like, I would love to. And so we made a plan to do that. And then I walked out to my car, and the chief, like, he escorted me out because it was very dark where their ancestral homeland is. There's like not a lot of light. There's bears. And the chief was like, I want to walk you out. I don't want you to get like mauled by a bear. And I was like, okay, thank you so much. And and at the time I was driving this like really old Honda Civic, and the key to my car, it got stuck in the driver's side and I couldn't get it out. So it just stayed in there. And I was just like, if somebody wants to steal my old car, well, I guess they'll steal it, because this is the only way that I can use it. I couldn't afford to like get a new key system in there. So he was like, did you leave this in here? And I was like, well, it's actually stuck in there. And he's like, for how long? And I was like, like 9 months. And I'm not making this up. I tried everything. Like I tried like my strongest friends trying to get it out. Nothing. Like oil, grease, everything. Nothing worked. Nothing. It was stuck in there. And like I tried all the time. He just did like a little thing and it came out. And I was like, what? Come on. And he was like, I'm not going to repeat his joke because I shouldn't say it. But he made a joke about why he was the one who was able to do it. And then he was like, okay. He's like, he handed me back the key and he's like, you know, I'd really like to introduce you to Branch, who's the oldest living member of the tribe and who could tell you about his experience as a young person, like when there were like schools for Black children and schools for white children, but no schools for Indian children, right? And I was like, okay. So when I went back the next weekend, I got to meet Branch, and we put him on the cover of CVL. I'm like getting goosebumps talking about it, because it was just like, I just couldn't believe that I had that opportunity, that they were so open and so generous. But I really think that I got to meet Branch because that stupid key was stuck in my door. And I was like, and I was vulnerable with the chief, you know, like it's easy to be like, oh, I'm a reporter coming in, I'm gonna tell your story, you know? And like, that's not responsible. You should be like, you know, I always try to be like, I'm curious about this, I care about this, I care about you, what can I do to, you know, to share this story in a genuine way. And so, yeah, that was such a special experience to have been invited to that. And at the end of the day, I was really glad that I had that stupid key issue for so long. And then, like, it didn't work after that either. So I don't know what was, Jeremy can attest to this. For years, I would have to like unlock my car on the passenger side and like lean over and unlock the driver's side and go back around and get in the driver's side, or have my passenger unlock it for me. It never worked again. But that one night, he was able to do it. So I don't know. It was magic or something. I don't know. But yeah, I love being able to meet all these folks doing amazing things, like the Monacan people just preserving their culture. Like they've had extraordinary challenges put upon them by society, like horrendous things that have been done to them. And yet here they are, sharing their culture, being who they are. It's pretty great. I'd recommend going there. Go to Amherst, see what they're doing. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Maybe one or two more?
Oh, do we have time? I feel like I've been talking for a really long time, but.
I think.
Yes, Ian.
I've got one. So I do a lot of work for Monticello, Charlottesville, Thomas Jefferson's home, and you know, same type of reconciliation issues where, you know, you're working at a place where there was enslaved people and they were not freed predominantly and struggle with all that. But one thing that I've found helps me, so I'm trying to offer it in hopes that it might help others, is there is a vibrancy in the stories of the people themselves. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that we try to do is tell a lot of the stories of the enslaved and bring empowerment to them. In fact, as of the past few years, Monticello has been accused of being too woke because of a lot of these stories. And so we did it. For example, we did a series called Monticello to Main Street, talking about Court Square and all that.
Yeah.
But one thing that is helpful for me is finding, bringing to life these people all across, you know, the history of being put down. And recently, actually, we worked with the Monacan Nation. They recognized what we're doing, and they chose Monticello over places like UVA as a home of their archive of their story.
Oh, wow.
So I also got to work with the chief and their nation. And there was a great point that they mentioned, and you probably came across this too, is that the Monacans saw what was happening to the Powhatan and the Algonquin and other tribes on the East Coast, and how white colonists were writing their story. And so they purposefully withdrew as an opportunity to preserve their culture and write their own identity. And so, you know, there's negativity, of course, with that as well, but there is also an empowerment in that. And so one thing that helps me is, and going back to that vibrancy thing, is, you know, when I come back to Charlottesville and I see these struggles that get you down, is recognizing that, yes, there's a lot of negativity, but within that, there's still vibrancy.
So much. Thank you for sharing that. I need to go back and read more of that and remind myself all of that, because it's an amazing thing that they've done.
I'm sure that the powwow is in a couple weeks, the first weekend.
That's true. Yeah.
In case anyone is curious.
I've never been. I haven't been able to go, but I would love to. And does anyone else have like a vibrant community type story? I feel weird saying vibrant community because there's a funding there's like a pot of money within the city called the Vibrant Community Fund. And I write about it a lot for work, so it feels really weird to be like the Vibrant Community when I'm like, that's a city funding mechanism. But does anyone else have like Vibrant Community stuff that they want to share? Like if you want to share with everyone how you do it? No? Yes?
Oh, I'll share.
Okay.
I couldn't find community connections for unmasked, autistic, late diagnosed adults. So I started like a meetup group. And so so we decided, because we get overwhelmed by a lot of people, we're like, how can we grow when we can't handle more than 8 people? Because people are like, oh, you're doing, I know someone. So now we decided that we're gonna just have little cohorts. So we'll be the first cohort of 8. And then when more people reach out like, oh, hey, like I need support. Then we're like, okay, we'll set you guys up as the next group. And then we can like keep it so we don't melt down. So if you know unmasked, late diagnosed adults, pass them along.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
So
sharing
build the
that.
thing you need.
Yeah.
And then people are like, yeah, me too. And we're starting a spin-off group for the partners of people in the group who are struggling with their autistic partners.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like, see how it just like happens? It's like, why was my first thought an algae bloom? But like, you know how it like just like once it starts, it proliferates. I think that's amazing. It's so great that you're doing that for folks. So.
And I just picture like you're talking about like sort of the systems, like these like almost like blocks and the sidewalk and the bricks and these things that are frustrating about this, you know, hundreds of years of embedded systems. But then like all these plants coming up through the cracks, very beautiful beautiful idea, sort of visuals there, but all these beautiful bouquets where people are doing cool stuff. And we might not even realize all the different things that are going on.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank you. Yeah.
This is a different vibe, but I always think Charlottesville's best export was ladies arm wrestling.
Yeah.
I know Claude is about to happen. If no one's been to Charlottesville ladies arm wrestling, I think now it's happening about twice a year. The next one's in June. It's always a fundraiser for a local nonprofit. It's like pro wrestling, but arm wrestling.
With costumes.
Characters and plots and
yes.
very elaborate plots. And the next one's in June.
It's
and
great.
It started here and then spun out to the collective of lady arm wrestlers. I was in Austin, Texas for work and found out that Clawston was happening.
Yeah.
And I was at the front and like I was buying my ticket and they were like, oh, you've been to Claw before? You know how it works? And I was like, oh, I'm from Charlottesville. And they go, oh, you know how it works. And so like similar to your story with Pyrex, it's like I'm in Austin, Texas, which is, you know, such a hip town, and they're like, oh, like respect to Charlottesville, the creator of wrestling.
Totally. That's like a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love that it's something so wacky and strange.
Yes.
But amazing.
Check out still to help the community.
Yes, it's like it's always a fundraiser for like She Shelter or like they've done Sarah.
I think Sarah is too.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I think it's 10 o'clock.
Guess I gotta go to my job now.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
So yeah, end of the